Stalled talks aimed at securing a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war are expected to resume in earnest in Qatar as soon as Sunday. Today is Sunday, March 17th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. Stalled talks aimed at securing a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war are expected to resume in earnest in Qatar as soon as Sunday. That's according to two Egyptian officials who spoke to the Associated Press on condition of anonymity. Hamas has given mediators a new proposal for a three-stage plan that would end the fighting. Israel is sending negotiators to Qatar for the new talks. Warnings are growing about Israel's planned military attack on Rafah in southern Gaza, where more than half of the territory's population now shelters. And thousands have rallied in Tel Aviv to protest against the government. A Russian regional governor says 2 people have been killed in Ukrainian shelling of the city of Belgorod, close to the border with Ukraine. 3 others were wounded. Russia's defense ministry said it thwarted attempts by Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance groups to enter the Belgorod region. Also on Saturday, a Ukrainian drone attack caused a fire at an oil refinery belonging to Russian oil giant Rosneft in the Samara region, the regional governor said. He added that an attack on another refinery was thwarted. No casualties were reported. The attacks come a day after a Russian assault on the Ukrainian port city of Odessa killed at least 21 people. When Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died suddenly last month in an Arctic prison, his team was left with a monumental challenge: sustaining an opposition movement against President Vladimir Putin without the living example of their defiant and charismatic leader. A significant test will come Sunday, the last of 3 days that Russian voters can go to the polls in a presidential election that is widely viewed as more of a formality than an exercise in democracy. Navalny's team is urging Russians to flock to polling stations Sunday at noon, local time across the country's 11 time zones, to demonstrate their discontent with Putin's rule and his war against Ukraine. Voters across Russia have cast ballots on the second day of an election set to formalize 6 more years of power for Vladimir Putin. The Russian president faces no serious challengers after crushing political dissent over his nearly quarter-century of rule. The election comes against the backdrop of a ruthless crackdown that has crippled independent media and prominent rights groups. Putin's fiercest foe, Alexei Navalny, died in an Arctic prison last month, and other critics are either in jail or in exile. The 71-year-old Putin faces 3 token rivals from Kremlin-friendly parties who have refrained from any criticism of him or his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. That war was visible on Russia's streets Saturday as Ukrainian drone and missile attacks once again hit the country. After the pandemic, young Chinese are again looking to study abroad. But the decades-long run that has sent an estimated 3 million Chinese students to the U.S. could be trending down. The deterrent for some is the high cost of a U.S. education. For others, like Helen Dong, who chose to study in the UK, safety is a concern. She said Chinese parents fear gun violence in the U.S., but growing tensions between the U.S. and China are contributing to the trend. The Chinese government has criticized the U.S. for what it says is an unfriendly policy toward some Chinese students, and is nudging them to attend Chinese institutes instead. President Joe Biden is expressing support for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer after the senator called for new elections in Israel. It's the latest sign that the U.S. relationship with its closest Middle East ally is careening toward fracture over the war in Gaza. Schumer said earlier in the week that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has lost his way, and warned that Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. Biden is a longtime supporter of Israel, but there have been growing strains as the Palestinian death toll continues to grow after months of war. India has announced its 6-week-long general elections will start on April 19th, with most surveys predicting a victory for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party. Voting in the world's largest democracy will stretch over 7 phases, with different states voting at different times, and results will be announced on June 4th. Over 970 million voters, more than 10% of the world's population, will elect 543 members for the lower house of Parliament for a term of 5 years. Modi is seeking a third term and faces little challenge as the main opposition alliance of over 24 regional parties, led by the Indian National Congress Party, appears to be cracking. Riven by rivalries, political defections, and ideological clashes. Media reports in Latvia say that the country's state security service has started criminal proceedings against an European Parliament lawmaker and a citizen of the Baltic country who is suspected of cooperating with Russian intelligence and security services. Latvian media outlets reported Saturday that Latvian Security Service has been investigating the activities of 73-year-old Tatjana Zdanoka and her alleged Russia ties over the past several weeks. Reports published in January by Russian, Nordic, and Baltic news sites said that she has been an agent for the Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB, since at least 2004. The security service couldn't immediately be reached for comment. Zdanoka has denied all the allegations against her. Vaughan Gething has won the Welsh Labour Party leadership contest and is set to become the first black leader of Wales' semi-autonomous government. Gething is currently Welsh Economy Minister. He beat Education Minister Jeremy Miles in a race to replace First Minister Mark Drakeford. Gething needs to be confirmed next week by the Welsh Parliament, where Labour is the largest party. He is the son of a Welsh father and Zambian mother, and will be the first black leader of a government in the UK. Wales is one of 4 countries that make up the United Kingdom, along with England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. About 1.4 million Haitians are on the verge of famine, and more than 4 million require food aid. Sometimes people are eating only once a day, or not at all. Officials are trying to rush food, water, and medical supplies to makeshift shelters and other places as gang violence suffocates lives across Port-au-Prince and beyond. Many people are trapped in their homes. Only a handful of aid organizations have been able to restart operations since February 29. That's when gangs began attacking key state institutions and burned police stations. They also stormed the country's 2 main prisons and freed more than 4,000 inmates. They've also been firing at the main international airport, which remains closed. Today's news has been reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Sunday, March 17th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.